Hello, I'm Erkin here from MedPorium, and today we will start part 4 of the skeletal system. This video or this lecture is specifically going to talk about bone remodeling and bone repair. Bone remodeling. Let's talk about what is bone remodeling exactly. Well, bone remodeling is a process that occurs throughout one's lifetime. So this is a lifelong process, and this is where mature bone is removed and new bone tissue will be formed. Now, bone remodeling also controls replacement and reshaping of bone after a fracture has occurred. Let's begin with the process of bone remodeling. Now, over here in red, we have our osteoclast cell. And then over here in blue, we have our osteoblast. And if we go down here, we have this diagram of the bone surface. This white part here just represents bone, and these green cells labeled here in this bright green color is simply bone lining cells. They line the surface of the bone. Now, if you will, bone remodeling, in a kind of funny way to put it, is the skeletal system's haircut. The reason we have bone remodeling is to prevent it from looking like this. Now, this is a condition called osteoporosis, and this is just an increased bone thickness and density. There's decreased activity of osteoclasts, so there's decreased amount of bone reabsorption, and it will end up becoming more thicker and more dense, and this is why we need bone remodeling to prevent it from getting extra big and thick like that. Let's take a look at exactly how those osteoclasts and osteoblasts do that process of bone remodeling, or the bone's haircut, if you will. Now, it all starts off with activation. The osteoclasts, they have to get activated and signal toward their designated location. Now, once that happens, this is where the osteoclasts will take over. And here in red, they will latch on to the bone surface, and they will release an acidic substance that dissolves the surface of the bone. Now, as this dissolving is going on, the enzymes inside the osteoclast will retrieve the dissolved calcium and phosphate ions, and they will use it somewhere else in the body. Now, once this process has finished and the osteoclasts are done, they will leave this sort of gap in the bone surface, and we can't leave it like this. And so this is where the bone building cells, the osteoblasts here in blue, will do the opposite of the osteoclast, and then they will come over here and they will deposit osteoid tissue, which is collagen and hydroxyapatite, to rebuild this bone. Now, once they're done depositing and once they're done building up this bone again, as we recall in our previous lectures, some of these osteoblasts here in blue will turn into osteocytes. Now, let's put that here in purple. These osteoblasts, some will become trapped into their own matrix, and now they will become osteocytes. This is what I meant by in our previous lectures. They will become trapped. And that basically concludes bone remodeling. The bone will remodel itself given the osteoblasts, and some of those osteoblasts will become trapped and they will turn into osteocytes. As such, it will close off like that, and the bone lining cells will return back here and line the surface of the bones once more. So we've just finished bone remodeling. Now let's move over to bone repair, which is kind of similar to bone remodeling, but now we're focusing on fractures. So let's talk about the 6 main fractures. There's a transverse fracture that is non-displaced, so it is not displaced. There's the transverse one over here that is displaced. Then we have a compound fracture. This is where it snaps completely in half and it's going to peek or poke through the skin. And then we have an oblique fracture, which comes at an angle. And then we have a comminuted fracture, which is more than 2 fractures. And then we have a green stick, which is not all the way, but like a green stick light when you're in a dark cave. That's kind of what it looks like here. It's like halfway cut. Now that we've learned the types of fractures, let's take a look at exactly what happens after a fracture has occurred inside of the human body. Now over here we have a simple transverse non-displaced fracture. Now the very first response your body will have is hematoma formation. This is when the hematoma is converted to granulation tissue by invasion of cells and blood capillaries. So your body's very first response to this fracture is a lot of swelling. You can see here this periosteum is now swelled up, and there will be a lot of blood and a lot of hematoma here. Now after probably 1 to 2 days, the second step is soft callus formation. This is the deposition of collagen, and fibrocartilage converts granulation tissue to a soft callus. So this fibrocartilage here will help and turn this soft callus, will help turn this tissue into a soft callus to help protect the bone. And now we have over here, we have new blood vessels invading this medullary cavity, invading the bone to help repair this. Now, after another 1 to 2 days, the third step will happen, and this is a hard callus formation. So this is when osteoblasts deposit a temporary bony collar around the fracture to unite the broken pieces while ossification occurs. So we have this soft callus will now harden and calcify to become a temporary hard callus, like a cover, to help make this bone rebuild itself. And now we have spongy bone here in the middle, and these cells, these blood vessels will start delivering nutrients. And the last step, number 4, this is our last step to this fracture repair, is bone remodeling. Now we talked about this previously a couple of sections ago, and so now we have small bone fragments are removed by osteoclasts, while osteoblasts deposit spongy bone and then convert it into compact bone. So just like we discussed in the last little bit of this video, we have the bone remodeling that is occurring here to complete this final step of bone repair. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of part 4. The topics that were discussed included bone remodeling and bone repair. Now don't forget that a Pomodoro a day will make you a doctor someday, and do us a favor and drop a like and subscribe.